Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator. I'm all about capturing and curating career and life stories as a meaningful way to celebrate a milestone moment like a big O birthday, anniversary, retirement, or graduation. And I'm at my best when curating photo books that move your memories from the basement or your phone or your computer to the coffee table, giving you and your family and friends access to these treasured memories for years to come. I also love curating and capturing life and career stories through this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? It's a series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing they are not alone, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing my good friend, Shannon Saviers. Welcome, Shannon.
Well, thank you, Kathy.
And we've met just in this last year through Wise Women and through golfing. And I feel like we became fast friends just on a number of fronts. And then now we're doing a legacy book for her dad, which is so fun. And so I get to see a lot about how she grew up and the influence that her dad had on her. So Shannon is a vice president at Sancherry and Associates, which is a management consulting firm. Before we jump into today's interview, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Life Story Curator, a testimonial from one of their very happy clients.
Oh my gosh, if you're considering hiring Kathy Lawless to do a book for you, you need to do it. My name is Ann DuPont, and I'm chair emeritus of a nonprofit that's been based in Denver called the Leadership Investment. And after 20 plus years of being in business, we decided we had to celebrate and commemorate all of the great work we'd done and the impact we'd had in the Denver community. So we hired Kathy Lawless and Life Story Curator to help us do exactly that. And I've got to tell you, the result has been simply outstanding. We went into it with a little bit of fear, thinking, is this going to be too much work? Can we really take this on? And Kathy just made it absolutely painless. She was fun. She was creative. She broke the work into bite-sized pieces that we could really take hold of and get done. And she just made it a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughter along the way. And the feedback from the members of our organization, from the staff, the community, the volunteers, has simply been outstanding. It has really done quite a remarkable job of capturing the essence of everything we achieved over 20 years. So if you're thinking about doing something like this for your organization, for your career, for your family, I would highly recommend it, and I would absolutely say that Kathy Lawless and Life Story Curator is the person for you.
As you know, listeners, we always like to start with the icebreakers and find out, if you would tell us, Shannon, where you grew up, kind of what part of the country or the world, and what your family dynamic was like, your birth order, and how you think your birth order and the geographic nature of how you grew up shaped you as an individual.
Sure. So I'm glad you said, where did you grow up? Either around the world or what part of the country. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. I'm the daughter of a military military person. And so we moved a lot. I lived in 18 houses before I was 18 when I went away to college at University of Colorado. I since then stayed in Colorado, married a native who's third generation, and here I am, still here.
And still here.
Yeah. I am the oldest of two people, I have one sibling, a sister. She's 5 years younger than I am. And it's interesting, Kathy, because I was thinking about where do I feel in my birth order? And honestly, I kind of felt like we were two different families, because 5 years between people is like a fifth grader and a first grader, and a 12th grader and a seventh grader, so there's a lot of time span there. So she's my sister, but it wasn't like I was responsible or, had, a whole lot of that family interaction other than, we were two kids in one family type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny how until you get older, then the age difference doesn't seem to matter as much, right? But boy, when you're young, that you're right, it's huge, right? You were 5 and she was just a little tight coming into the world. So you were kind of the only and had
Yes.
all of that one-on-two attention from your parents. Yeah, so very different dynamic. Cool. So what activities did you do as a young person?
So I was in dance when I was really little pudgy little thing, dancing on the stage, and then got into gymnastics, and then I was a cheerleader and played the piano. I was also in plays, got the theater award at my high school. I was a journalist. I was the editor of the newspaper. So those were some of my activities as I was growing up.
Yeah. So it sounds like very active, very involved, very social.
Yes.
Okay. So speaking of social, then would you say introvert, extrovert, or ambivert?
I'm like a total extrovert.
Total extrovert.
Yeah, no question. I've always said I can't lie because I can't remember, to not say what's real. So yeah, I'm out there. I think.
Yeah. Well, and very expressive with what you're thinking at the time and everything, right?
Yeah, almost too much sometimes.
Almost too
That's okay.
Okay. Well, on the fun meter scale of 1 to 5, 1 being couch potato and 5 being life of the party, where do you put yourself?
I would say a 4 or 5,
A 4,
4.5, let's say. Yeah.
maybe a 7. I don't know. I've
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I rather enjoy getting people riled up and, sort of getting things kicked off and moving. I try not to dominate, I more urge people to get going and get engaged. I have this sort of internal kind of mantra about whenever I go to a party, I'm the host, even though I'm not.
Yeah.
So if I go to a networking function, I always, sort of take on that persona as the host because it always makes me feel more comfortable, and it also engages people in what's going on around them.
Yeah. Yeah. I've learned that technique as well. It helps you personally, but then it is great for everybody else because everyone's feeling a little awkward and a little, who am I going to know? And do I really want to go? And
Yeah.
yeah, it's helpful when someone's just there talking to you right at the table or at the parking lot, right? It's always great, even in the parking lot, to walk in with someone.
You bet. Yeah.
And not have that immediate, who do I know? And you just want to run to that person, but you're being cool, right? You're being cool.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah. So risk meter, same scale, 1 to 5, 1 being low risk taker, 5 being a high risk taker. Where do you put yourself?
I think it depends upon the situation. I would say, 4. I mean, I'm not like an adrenaline junkie, but I enjoy being in the tickle zone, kind of like where you got that little tickle of, I don't know if I should do that or not do that, that sort of place in the world. So a little edgy, but not, not necessarily saying, going over that edge of saying, okay, I'll do anything. I'll, jump from that cliff type of thing.
Yeah. But you want that little nudge or that little buzz, I guess.
Yeah.
Thrill,
Yeah.
So you push yourself in that way, but not all the way over the edge.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No skydiving yet.
Okay. None of that yet. I did the indoor skydiving. I don't know.
Oh, I should do that.
And so that was really fun, because it's well, and you were a gymnast, I was a gymnast. So yeah, the floating and the body, that was really cool. And then someone asked me afterward, well, now are you ready to jump out of a plane? And I'm like, no.
No. Oh, no.
Because it's very different to look down and see a net and a giant fan, and my brain can get around that, the reason that I'm floating, is because of that, and not that I just jumped out of a plane, which I'd be like, how do I take that first step out of the plane? My brain probably wouldn't let me. Okay. So, well, Shannon, tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a vice president at Sancherry Associates. doing management consulting, and then we'll get into how did I get here?
Okay, great. So I am responsible for business development and also service delivery, which means that I have relationships with clients, typically long-term or repetitive relationship or projects that I do with them. Um, I sort of identify where they need help in their growth or strategy, try to discern what are the things that are going to make it move the needle and help them, make the change that they need to make. We scope a project, and then I'm also responsible for building the team and then executing on the delivery of the project, which means, finding the right resources within our organization, making sure that the project's going as planned, interacting with the client to make sure they're happy, urging or pushing on the consultants to make sure that the product that we deliver is high quality as we can get it, in the time frame, and the time spent on it. And then, maintaining those relationships over time. I've been at the organization 16 years. 6 years, the last 6 years have been in that role. Before that, I was just doing consulting and doing large transformation projects with them.
So the business development role is the new role in the last 6 years.
Yeah, which isn't that new, but yes,
Isn't that new?
anymore.
No, anymore. But it is a shift to go from the consulting to the business development and owning then the whole kind of soup to
It
nuts,
is.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I always said to myself, I'll never be in sales. And I really don't believe I'm in sales. I believe that I bring solutions to clients. So that's how I frame it in my head.
Yeah. Well, and I get, because I was part of a similar consulting unit. And yeah, you needed to have that person like what you're doing, going out and talking to the clients about, well, where are their pain points? And sometimes they don't even know, they're just talking to you about what's going on, but you can see through it because you've seen it with other clients, and you can see that there's another way forward, and that they need either a different strategy, different level of management, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's quite the skill set to be able to do that but then also to deliver. I mean, that's both.
Yeah. But I think it's important because you have it in your head what needs to be done, and you have it in your head how it can be solved and how it can help the client, and who knows better than you that's been talking to them, and then turning back around and working with the making sure that the client is getting what they need out of it, and even if there are twists and turns, that you're sort of navigating it.
Yeah,
I think that's important.
So a lot of human interaction. So your extrovertedness works well, I would guess.
It does. It does.
Okay, so when you were, I'm going to take you back now onto how did I get here?
Yeah.
When you were in junior high school, what were you thinking you wanted to be when you grew up? And were you thinking
an actress, an artist, who knows? Something like that.
Were you thinking management consultant?
Oh, yeah. Well, understand that, I grew up in the military, so I only thought there were pilots.
Oh.
Yeah, I have to tell you that when I was selecting college, I applied to University of Colorado, and I applied to the art program. So I was very interested in being an artist until I got through the first half of my first freshman semester and realized that I wasn't a very good artist, and quickly switched to business. And in doing so, was able to, sort of set my sights on, this is the direction I want to go. I didn't know anything other than the military. So it was like, okay, there's military and then there's business. So I'm going to be a businesswoman. And this was, in the 70s, in the late 70s. So not many role models, but, I was headed that way regardless. I was going to be the first women, blah, 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 whatever it was going to be in business. So that was the direction I headed.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, because how do you know when you're a young person, right? That's what's so hard. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is you look at the people around you, you look at your teachers and, who's of influence in your circle. And yeah, you got to pick one. So you start with art and then you jump over to business. But is it just because you said, like you said, business, it was either business or military? You thought there was just kind of two options.
Yeah.
Art was maybe the third, but you're like, whoa, I'm not.
Yeah. I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to be a lawyer, So what else is there?
Yeah. But you also didn't think about teaching either. So business was.
No, that's true. That I don't have that nurturing bone.
Well, from a business perspective, did you have a teacher or a coach or something that kind of was pulling you in that direction?
I think I can't remember anyone specifically influencing me other than knowing that I wanted to be independent. I wanted to, have enough money to live on. I wanted to be self-sufficient, all of those things that sort of led me in that direction. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So, I didn't really have that. I knew that that's what I didn't want. So that's it was more of a I call it more a survival than a calling.
Yeah. Yeah. And your dad at the time when you were college age, was he still in the military at that time?
He was. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So still you hadn't even seen him switch because I know he switched then to get into more business, business oriented.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, when I was in high school selecting my college, I was in the Philippines. So unlike all the wonderful tours that you can do today or looking online at colleges, I sort of like opened up Time magazine and they had a spread of, a bunch of kids streaking on Folsom Field. And I said, I got to go there. So that's how I picked my college,
which I'm sure their marketing department and PR department hated that that's what was in Time magazine, but you're like, I'm in.
Yeah. Fun factor.
Okay, see, you are 7. You weren't a 4 or 5, you're 7 in that. Tell us then how college. So then once you jumped into business in the middle of that first semester, then no looking back?
Yeah, no looking back. And I got through college in 3.5 years. I was very interested in the stuff that I was learning and just kind of poured myself into it. I was in a couple of clubs, very active. I was part of an international club called ISEC. I was the president of that group. I also was in a sorority, rush chairman. So, had a very active social life, as well as just really diving into what that career would be like. I really enjoyed operations management and sort of the organizational aspects of it. So spent, time studying that. And when I got out, I was sort of a dual emphasis operations management and organizational management. So I kind of had those two sides of it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned though that you're also in two organizations, but you're also in leadership roles in those organizations.
Oh yeah.
How did you find your leadership voice? Were you just kind of a natural leader, or
that's a good question. And that came from moving around, where in the military, you move every 2 years. And so if you think about it, you have 1 year to make your mark and the next year to transition. And so, when I, at every school that I started in, I would always run for student council. By the way, I didn't always win. The only time I did win was my junior year when I went for a slot and nobody else ran against me. So I was, that was the default on that one. But what that taught me was kind of get involved early. And if you're going to be involved, get involved all the way, because, just being a participant is not really, it doesn't engage me. So, so that's just, that's just a natural pattern, and you'll see it, that happens all throughout my career. So.
Yeah. Well, that's got to be tough as a young person moving all the time, but maybe because you knew that was going to happen, that's also a different maybe expectation. Because I think a lot of young people are surprised if a move happens, right? Because they don't
Yeah.
know that that's going to happen, and all of a sudden mom or dad's career takes them to a different place. But in the military, you know that, right? Did you ever
Yeah.
resent your dad, though, the fact that that you didn't want to move every 2 years?
Yeah, the older I got, the more painful it got. Um, where you're living, you're younger and you're like, okay, you don't, your friends, you could see them in 2 weeks or you could see them never again. But when you get older, those ties are much tighter. And so it was tough. I would say, particularly my move when I went from sophomore to junior year was a particularly difficult one. It wasn't so hard leaving high school because nobody was going to be there and nobody ever went back to there because it was in the Philippines. But it was tough. It was tough. But again, it's kind of replacing what's lost with something that's exciting. So,
Yeah.
you kind of fill it in.
Yeah. Well, and being the extrovert that you are, you want to meet friends. So what great way to do that than to get involved in an organization and just, I mean, that's almost a
Exactly.
natural way to get involved as the new kid, right? Is, hey,
Yep.
I'm going to step up and run for these roles, and I'm not going to just be passing you in the
Right.
hallway. I want to
Yeah.
be noticed and be part of it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for giving us that little insights. Again, that's so important about where we grew up. And plus, then you were around the world. So I would think that kids would be just naturally drawn to you because they'd be like, well, tell us what it's like to be in the Philippines or whatever country you were in.
Yeah, but it also, I'll tell you what it did more than that is that it made me appreciate, um, how sometimes when you look at things and you go, oh, that's different. And the way I always thought about it is, oh, I'm different. That's natural. That's what they do. That's the culture. And I'm the different one. And so it was it's sort of it gives you a lot of respect for understanding that you're the newbie going into an environment and you have to sort of quickly assess the situation and try to figure out ways that you can fit in, as opposed to, hey, you're coming into my world and we're going to do it my way type of thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're different cultures and
You
different
bet.
languages and food and
Yep.
slang and all the different things that are funny and not funny. And yeah, you had to learn all of that. And then you come back to the US and you didn't have maybe some of the cool stuff because you'd been gone.
Well, I'll tell you, my first weekend at CU, it snowed and I didn't have a pair of shoes because I'd been wearing sandals for 2 years. So there
Ah,
you go.
there you go. There you go. I'm good. I need shoes. And probably a down coat. You probably didn't have a right coat either,
Maybe
I would
some
guess.
socks. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so you graduate college. What was that first job then?
So my first job was in human resources for an aviation company. Remember my dad was he was an aviator. And I went to work for Jefferson Sanderson, the aviation mapping company, and went in as an HR person. And that was my first real job where I dressed up, in Walter Malloy's little bow tie thing and, jacket, and walked around in my pumps. And, it was pretty important because I was interviewing everybody that was going to get a job there or not.
Or not, yeah.
Or not.
And you had the suit jacket with the shoulder pads because it was the 80s, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And did that fit you? I mean, it sounds like you were kind of pleased that this is a great job to have right out
Yeah,
of the.
I actually enjoyed it. Um, but what happened is that, and I can't even remember how much I was making, it doesn't really much matter, but I was interviewing people, and it was sort of at the dawn of the IT, starting to get, uh, computing on with companies, and we were hiring. a whole new IT staff. And I was interviewing these people, and oh my gosh, Kathy, they were making like 3 times what I was making. It was crazy.
Mm.
And I was like looking at this, and most of them, of course, were men. But then interviewed this woman who came in, and she was just such a gracious person and had so much going for her. She was beautiful. She was tall. She was, smart. She was making a ton of money. And I had been working with the headhunter, and I said, I was kind of like, meaning that he was bringing me candidates. And I was like, how can these people be making so much money? Gosh, I wish I could do that. And he goes, well, you know what? You can. He said, you know what they need in IT is somebody who can speak English, somebody who can interrelate with people, somebody that understands, that can translate the needs of the business into, requirements of the computer age, if you will. And so I made a decision to go back and get my master's degree in information systems. And in doing so, began sort of my, I'll call it version 1.5, which was moving more into the IT space, and got a job as a technical writer and then a systems analyst, and sort of had that IT, that kind of technical part of me
Yeah.
build up.
And at a timing when, like you were saying, technology was definitely on the
Oh
rise.
my gosh, it was so cool.
And, but not a lot of women in it. I mean, there's still not a lot of women in it, which is kind of sad. There's way more now than there ever has been. But yeah, you were definitely a pioneer at that time.
I was, yeah. I was at the very beginning.
But I do love too how you said, you're just kind of off the cuff mention this to this person.
Yeah.
That, oh, well, maybe I need to be doing something, or, why can't I make this kind of money? He's like, well, you can. And then he opened the door for you, right? Because you kind of had this limiting belief for yourself. But then he's like, well, you can totally. This is what they need. But he also gave you a road, right?
Right, a bridge. Yeah,
like, you could be her, which you kind of be like, well, how do I get to be her? But he gave you that bridge.
Yeah. So that opened a whole different door that was so enlightening, and just kind of set me on a totally different trajectory in my career, being, more on the technology side. And kind of was a systems analyst, and then decided to get more into the product side, and really spent the next 10, 15 years leading product development that were technology enabled products, because I had the technical background, but I also had the business background, and I also had the people skills. And so kind of brought it all around to, okay, well, how can we design products that fits the needs of the customers that are technology enabled?
Oh, so did you stay in the aviation space, or were you?
No, because I worked HR, I worked for an aviation, then I worked for a construction company, then I worked for actually Frontier Airlines for a while, and then I went to work for an information company. So sort of traversed about, if you will, because the industry wasn't as important as it was, I think, the basic skill set that I had to be able to apply to it.
Yeah.
And then I was in that product job for quite a bit, several years. And one day was reading Working Woman magazine. Do you remember that? I don't even know if it exists. I don't think it does anymore.
I haven't looked, because I a lot of magazines.
Yeah.
I just don't read magazines anymore. Right?
Yeah. And it said, top, 50 companies that, appreciate women, or top women-friendly companies. And I opened it up, and US West was at the very top of that list. And, they're in Denver. And I said, gosh, I think I want to go work for them. And so I just sort of started talking about it, and lo and behold, ended up actually through a connection. My dad at the time was working for a company back east, and he was in charge of the aviation group, and happened to be flying, having one of the clients fly to him that was coming from Denver, and somehow, I don't know how it came up, they said, "Hey, don't you have a daughter here? Do you want to, stick her on the airplane?" And he said, "Sure." And I flew back for the weekend, and it turned out to be the senior vice or executive vice president, or whatever his title was, of the human resources at US West. So I got to know him, and and it just kind of, everything sort of fell in order, and I'd been being recruited by a headhunter at the same time, and it just was that one little nudge to get me in.
Wow. Wow. So that's kind of cool that it was a relationship from your dad.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and this flight, and back to the aviation thing again, right? With the planes being such a common theme in your family.
yeah.
Interesting. Well, not everybody gets that opportunity, right?
No, gosh,
4 hours
no.
with an executive and on
Yeah.
the company that you want to work for. Oh yeah. Because it could have been a totally different company that he was that was flying you back.
It could have. It could have. Yeah, yeah.
So now you're back in HR again.
No, I went to work in
Oh.
strategy.
Oh, in
Strategy. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And it was all about developing at that time there was um, a, a decree, if you will, that allowed US West to get into the information business. And so I was taking my background in the information business and sort of applying it into this whole new world in it really was in advertising in the Yellow Page division. So it was looking at ways that we could create electronically based, data-based information for customers. Now, mind you, this was in the late 90s, where people didn't use things like computers to look up in the Yellow Pages. It was still like the time when everybody go, "Oh my gosh, the Yellow Pages are here, the Yellow Pages are here." So it was, very early on in the real dawn of what would become broadband as we see it today, and the information that we have ready access to.
Wow. So you get to be part of the leading edge of
Yeah,
strategy for US
yeah,
West. That's got to
yeah.
be a cool job.
It was very cool. It was super cool. And I worked with some tremendous people, and many of whom were women. At one point in time, our leadership group, there were 12 vice presidents, and I think it was something like 8 of them or 10, majority, like a large amount, were women. So it was the first time that I'd really had strong women leaders to look to.
Yeah, and have those role models, and
Yeah.
if you can see it, you can be it, kind of thing. But it seems like you already had some sort of confidence anyway to be able to do that, because you were mainly the only woman before that, and you were going to such different I guess roles or industries than women were in. So tell us a little bit about how you got your confidence, and maybe part of that was what you were saying about the every 2 years having to move and having to make friends. But
Yeah.
stepping into a strategy role like that is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, there are a couple of things. One is that I've always studied hard. So, I got my bachelor's degree in 3.5 years. I got my master's degree in an area that not a lot of people had master's degrees in. So that did give me credentials that were unique in the field. I also have, I also am, pretty opportunistic. If there's something that comes up that, is an opportunity to volunteer and take a leadership role, then, count me in. I was, early on in one of my jobs, they had me going out and sort of evangelizing technology with the customers. And I didn't know a whole lot about the business or the product, but what I did know was how to translate and how to talk about technology in a way that people could understand. And so, I think that that ability to explain things in
Mm-hmm.
simplistic manner that people could understand, the ability to listen to problems and then be able to turn them back around and come up with solutions, um, kind of gave me, in my book, an opportunity. The other thing is that I'm very organized. So I am a project manager at heart. I have a plan, I have a backup plan, and then I have a backup plan. So what that did in my work is, I would be they always say the person that holds the pen is the person that has the power. So
Mhm.
I was always the person doing the planning or writing the plan or directing the plan or coordinating the plan. So, so I think that put me in always a very visible situation, and also helped me build that confidence and
Yeah.
that track record.
So is it that you can see the plan? I mean, is it
Oh,
just because like my sister is this way, she has a strength in strategy and she's like, she can step into different situations and roles and she can just see that this is the plan and this is what needs to happen.
I totally do that. I can, it's like I always said, I worked for this wonderful man, and he was a concept guy. And I said, show me your concept and I can take your concept and put it into a plan. I make your dreams come true is sort of how I put it, is that because I'm always, looking for that way of getting from, any problem can be solved as far as I can see. I mean, it all can be solved. And there's many ways to get there. And so it is a natural habitat of mine in this whole, planning, organizing, and directing. That's just a very natural place for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I would see that also with being a firstborn, but you really didn't have the firstborn set of responsibilities. Like some of the people I've interviewed, they're like, they were, I'm the oldest of 7 and we had 6 and 5.5 years or something like that. You're like, what? Yeah. And they were like the one responsible for all of those little ones underneath them and being kind of that second mom.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to do that, but these are just other skill sets that really come naturally for you. Have you
Yeah.
done the Strengths Finder?
I have.
Is strategy one of your Strengths Finder strengths, or?
Yeah. And achiever, gosh, I should have gotten that out before this, but yeah. They're all the things that you would imagine.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the cool things about, I think, the Strengths Finder tool is how, once you kind of get those, you're like, oh, well, that's my natural thing. And you probably look at this and go, well, why can't other people do this? Because you don't see it. And then, you write it out and then they can see it, but they didn't see it the way it just frames up for you. So
yeah.
awesome. So then your extrovertedness, you just haven't been afraid to kind of share that with people and share what your plans are and directing and
yeah. And the other thing is just I want to call it I'll call it either tenacity or I'll call it tenacity. There's I remember like a classic moment with one of my bosses who I didn't particularly love. And, I don't know what was happening, something, and I didn't agree with him. And he looked at me, he goes, you look so sweet until you open your mouth. And it was just like, it was one of those things where it's like, I expect you to be sweet because you're a girl. And it just like, revved me up. And I thought, never will anybody do that to me again, because I am smart and I am good and I do know what I'm doing, and I don't speak up until I know what I'm doing. I'm not, I really do know my stuff. And it just so that's always run kind of how I work. And not to say that there are times when I don't know my stuff. I mean, believe me, there's plenty of times, but when I do, it's I know it's ironclad.
Yeah. That is what's so challenging for women, right? Is that, that exterior expectation that we should act a certain way and not challenge and not be assertive. And then when we are, that's what gets people kind of riled up, right? Is that we don't fit the mold, especially I would say back in the early 90s.
Right,
And late 80s and stuff. You were like, well, but as a woman, you should be this way. And it's like, well, but I'm just being me.
yeah,
You mean I should be this way? You just don't have enough women around to know how women really work, right?
yeah.
And you want them to look and act like you. So of course you don't know how women work. So any times when you were through this path so far where you really kind of felt stuck? And or you said opportunistic, so it sounded like you're always looking for, oh, what could be next? But were there times where you got stuck or maybe
yeah.
didn't have as much success as you wanted?
Yeah. I mean, early on, I was laid off from a job, although I can't even remember which job it was or for how long. It must not have been for long. And that just devastated me. I mean, it was, it wasn't Shannon getting fired, but it was like it was a downturn of the business, which, was pretty common and lowest end of the denominator. And so, you're out type of thing. And I remember being just in utter, tears and talking to my husband. I'm like, oh my God, I have to find a job. It's so hard. And he goes, this is great for you. Guess what? You get to meet more people. And so, it's like, it was turning it around from this is awful to, lean on your strengths, lean on what you like to do. Take it as if you don't like that, then how do you reframe it into something else? And so that I think was like that just, was one of those things where you go, wow. And I think that experience of having that was a game changer for me. And another time that I kind of had this reckoning is that I had taken an opportunity to get, taken a package, and I was wanting to pursue this consulting career, which, by the way, I sort of planned 10 years before. I said, that's where I'm going in 10 years. And I prepared for it in terms of ensuring that I had, a background in a variety of areas, including, strategy, finance, marketing, customer technology, operations. And I'd been offered this, this opportunity to get this nice package, which was going to fund my first year of starting my own business, which was like magical, right? It's magical. But at the same time, or not at the same time, because about a year earlier, I had twins. So when when this happened, I left my company, vice president, blah, 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 blah. And then I was Shannon. And I was Shannon with my own company, but I had little kids, twins. And I had this crisis in who am I? I had this moment where you go from associating yourself, because remember, what was I going to be when I grew up? Business girl, right? Businesswoman. So all of a sudden I went from being a titled executive to being, on my own, not really a title, starting a business, a new mom, and my whole identity got blown away because I wasn't who I was. And that experience, I totally didn't anticipate that this would happen to me, but it just took me down, and it was like, oh my God, I'm nobody, Annie. I'm just nobody, because I wasn't a vice president. Well, I was really a CEO, but I forgot about that. And, and I was a mother of, incredible kids, and I was, all these things, but it by taking that title away and that company association, it just took me down. And what I learned from that is, we carry all of our things with us, and we are our own identity, not our companies or not our past or not, it's like who we are. And I think that was, it was a really low point, but it was a really good moment in my life in terms of being able to come into my own, and I was, in my 40s when that happened, but
Yeah.
yeah, big learning.
It's a big shocker, and you don't expect it. I had this similar experience when I got laid off. I mean, I took the package. I could have had another role and done, there was a title change and this and that. And but I decided it had been 20 years. So I took the package, and, of course you're celebrating, you're having fun. But I remember one of my kind of down moment was walking into a networking event, and there was no name tag,
Yeah.
or my name tag had my company on it, and I was no longer with that company. So I'm like, well, do I scratch it out? Or so then I had the handwritten name tag. And then I'm like, oh, what am I going to put on my name? It was and I wasn't prepared for that. Now,
Yeah.
the good news is I was actually on the board of directors for this women's leadership organization. So then I'm like, well, I'm on the board of directors, so I'll put board member. So then I put the women's leadership organization, which just gave me something that gave me that identity. But you're right, it's a big shock, and you don't realize how connected you are to the title and the prestige of the company.
Yeah.
And then, but also my measures of success. I remember, I've started my own business. I felt kind of proud of that. And then I'd be like, well, but what's my revenue? People ask, how's business going? How's this? And you're like, then you kind of start shrinking into your measures of success are so different, because, you're running these multi-million-dollar projects, and then you go to running not multi-million.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Multi-thousand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, really. It was a big change, but what I did, Kathy, and what this is like a pattern you'll see, is that, I decided then I had to find my team. What is, my team before was inside of my company. And now I had to find a new team. And so, as I do, during any transition, is I just, found a group, found a couple of groups that I could be really involved in. So, got very involved in the Mothers of Multiple, which ran their sale. Also got heavily involved in women in telecommunication and cable in Denver. And, it happened that group was going through, the industry was going through a transition, which is why I'd been allowed to leave, because there was somebody buying somebody, and there was a federal trade commission thing that they had to get rid of something or other. I don't know. There were all these trades going on.
Probably put your name on the list so that you could seed your firm. And I mean, so this was your choice, and then you ended up.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But inside of the industry, and especially in Denver, there were all these women, that belonged to this women's industry organization, that were going through all this transition. So we were talking about that as a kind of leadership team in that group, and said, what we need to do is to start a mentoring program. And so, and the whole idea was, how do we connect people that get it, that more senior women with more junior women, and kind of have them be able to help each other during this time of transition. And launch this mentoring program, which probably 1,000 people have gone through it in the last 10 years, or however many years it's been at this point. But again, that's the idea of, how do I get engaged in a new arena so that I can then, flourish? How do I get out of one and get into the other, and how do I find my, my people?
Yeah. How do you find your people? But you also were solving a bigger problem too. So that had to feel good, that it wasn't just you finding your next group of people. It was you helping all of these women in the same, in a similar boat, that you knew could go through this same identity issue.
And also Kathy, it was kind of giving back on I didn't have a role model thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have a role model. I didn't have anyone to turn to. So, how do we solve that? as, inside of the industry, outside, wherever we want to do it. But how do you, how do you provide that opportunity so that, the youngins can talk to can feel free to interact with people that are more senior, and, that they normally wouldn't get that intimacy with.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. If you've never had that, you don't even know you need it. But as soon as you have a little bit of that, boy, you sure recognize this is great. And oh my gosh, I'm so lucky to have this. And how can I get more of it? And then how can I help the people behind me? Right. Then there's the
Exactly.
forward
Yeah.
and back. But sometimes if you've never had it, you don't know you need it.
Right.
You get exposed to something and you're like, wow, this is that what I was craving. So, well, Shannon, gosh, this is where things are really getting good, but we got to start wrapping up here. So I do appreciate you sharing those last few pieces, because that is where it gets hard, but that's what people need to relate to, is they need to know it hasn't been all puppies and rainbows. You had to create your own rainbows, right? And your own bridges and your own next steps. And it's hard to do that when you're not feeling your strongest or your best.
Yeah.
Or being
Top of your
recruited,
game.
right?
Yeah.
If someone's not maybe recruiting you, it's very different. I remember I had several friends being recruited. I'm like, oh, well, I want to be recruited. How come it's funny how again, those measures of success,
Exactly.
you don't even know we're important to you until, but back when I was in corporate, I was kind of irritated by some of those calls when they came,
Right.
And then they were, well, no one's calling anymore. What happened?
Yeah.
Is this thing still working? Anyway? Okay. So I do have a couple wrap-up questions, Shannon. So the
Sure.
first is, share with us what you think served you best over your career and your life. It can be a strength, a habit, a characteristic, or maybe a discipline. What served you best?
I think it's, I think we talked about it a lot, which is, just feeling comfortable and giving grace to folks, and being able to pull experiences from a lot of places into solutions, kind of the systems thinking. So those are some of the things that are top of mind for me.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned translator earlier, and I think that translator, you got to be able to relate to both sides, right?
Yeah.
The side
Yeah.
you're translating from and the one you're translating to, right? So you really got to be in a zone where you're connecting with people and like you said, giving grace, but then you also have to give yourself grace, right? When you
Yeah.
get to the point of not doing so. Well,
Yes.
very cool. So, and then last wrap up question is, any words of wisdom that were impactful for you at some point in your career, or maybe words of wisdom that you use today that you feel kind of help you stay either inspired or
Yeah.
energized?
I'm a big believer in being intentional. And if you reflect back to the comment about I wanted to work for US West and somehow ended up in an airplane with the head of HR for US
Yeah.
West. I mean, that is not, I'm telling you these things. I wanted to meet Jane Pauley one year. I wanted to meet her. And guess what? I met her. It's like, and it's not like magical, like I have these 4 things that I'm going to do. It's just like saying I want to go there, saying I want to do that, and then just being open to avenues of getting there, however weirdly they happen. So, I'm a big believer in that. I set my intention, and it's all in, man. It's, I want to, right now I'm serving on a nonprofit school board. But, my intention is to work on corporate boards. And so I'm super intentional. I'm doing classes, I've got certification, I'm networking, but, I think that everybody has to be, if you're intentional, it happens.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, you made a key point when you said intentional, that you say it out loud. You tell other people, because if you just keep it in your head and you're just like, oh, I'm going to do this. Then other people can't help you. And that's the thing that happened for you, right? Is as soon as you start talking to other people, they're like, oh, well, here's a class you can take. Here's a certification you can take. Well, here's a board that's looking. That's the kind of thing that starts to happen, right? Or so-and-so's flying on a plane, and why don't you join them? And that's kind of, okay, that's a little bit out there, but it happens. So why can't finding a board happen? Absolutely. Well, Shannon, this has been such a pleasure. Again, I've had such a great summer golfing with you and spending time with you, and now working with you and your sister and learning about your dad's life story. Now I got to dive into your life story. So it has been a pleasure. So thank you for sharing that. And I know that someone out there needed to hear this today. So
Oh, thank you. Okay,
awesome.
you're welcome.
And listeners, if you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe below so you'll be alerted when other interviews are published. And if you have any questions for me or for Shannon, you can find this interview on the blog section of my website, lifestorycurator.com, which I will also post all of Shannon's social media information so you can get in touch with her should you decide to do so. And on that note, I guess I will say, stay safe, stay well, and let's keep sharing those stories. Have a great day.